So hello there, just checking in. Haven't done a stream in a very long time. Boom, vocal fry, the most annoying sound in the world. It looks like, just checking through, the platforms. Looks like YouTube has changed their settings again so that we cannot stream directly to it. Sending data to something. Oh, stream keys changed. All right, well, honestly. Right, so I have to restart, so be right back. Right, so let's see if this works. And it does, yes, so it's a stream key. They keep updating the stream key without saying anything. Anywho, deal with that another time. So, it has been a very long time since we've done anything because there's been a lot of projects going on. So just those are done, they're finished for now at least. So just working on this little project and making a face mask made from toilet paper. So it was already basically shaped from a plane, so I just dropped a plane into the scene and then extruded the edges around the avatar's head. So that's that button. Just extruded those around, and then this is just a different version where it just drops over the ears rather than wrapping around the head. So it's another nonsense item. Oops. What we could say is in protest of all the serious lifestyle items that we now see on IMVU. but mainly this stream is just to double check all the settings are working as they should do. And that everything is working as it should be. Because there's a lot of mucking about that's necessary when doing these streams, because the platforms don't really like you streaming using a service that allows you to stream to multiple platforms. They really want you to be loyal, for want of a better word to use, to their platforms. So they don't like you using a service like Restream or any of the others. As your means of connecting to their service. Because reasons. And that's despite them providing the APIs and the platform, not the platforms, the APIs and the bits and pieces that allow you to do that. Okay, it's working properly now. Right, that's fine. Takes a while for all this stuff to filter through so that it starts to display properly on the embedded websites where the, well, where the embeds are used. So that will be our toilet paper face mask. Clear sharp. So I'm just double checking. Clear sharp. Don't necessarily want the whole thing to look mushy, but that means putting in some structure to support putting in a sharp edge. So this sharp edge comes in from around that side, but we can't just add it to this edge to continue it, because this edge is part of a convex shape. So that's the convex shape, but you can't really put a sharp edge over the top of. So we have to, whoops, we have to terminate the sharp edge here, and then maybe make this edge concave by manipulating this edge. So it gets all very complicated, like so. So now we've got a bit of a funky shape here, where we've got a collapsed edge. There should be an edge here, but there isn't because it's a quad. So toggle to quad, triangulate. So now we can, whoops, mark this edge as sharp. Oops. So reorganize that face, triangulate, join those two together, reorganize that face, so that's triangulate, select, join, select, join. So what we're essentially doing is creating a low poly, scrunched up area. Without overloading the structure with a ton of polygons, which we don't need to do. So that's Control E. That's the shortcut to get the Edge menu, Specials menu up. So that'll do. So let's save this file, save as. So to set this up as an item for, well, it's an accessory. So to set this up as an accessory, so what we want to do, where's the head? So get rid of the hair. Don't need those for now. Where's the head? Oh, there it is. So what we want, hide that skeleton. We want to attach this mesh to the armature that represents the head bone of the avatar. So this is positioned pointing forward the way that it is to match the orientation of the skeleton, the avatar skeleton. So they all point in different directions because that's how the bones are set up. But we want to link the mesh with the armature. So we do two things. Mesh, so we're in edit mode whenever we do anything to the mesh, aside from changing its general, well, we can change its dimensions in object mode, but if we want to do anything to the mesh, i.e. shaping it, we have to be in edit mode. Shortcut key for that is tab. So for this we need to select all, and we want to be object data properties. We need to create a vertex group. So we click the plus sign or plus button, creates group, double click, rename attachment root, uppercase A and uppercase R, and then we assign that, click the assign button, we assign that to our object, and we can test that using the deselect and select buttons. So that's step one. Back into object mode, and what we want to do is assign an armature. So modify properties. We've already got an edge split modifier in place, but we want armature. Click on that and we'll get this panel. We can either, I wouldn't advise doing this, but we can click on the browse armature icon, which is the little cube, or preferably for accessories just use the eyedropper. And the reason is, if we click on the icon, it lists all the armatures that are in the scene, and there are some 100 and something of them, because there is an armature for each bone of the avatar, for each bone. So there is literally an armature for every bone. So trying to find the right one in here, although they are, you can type. So we could type the H, but that then lists all the bones with an H in them. We've got the head bone there actually, which is convenient for this because there's only one head bone. But if you're trying to select one of the finger bones, for example, the best thing to do is just use the eyedropper. Click on that, and then click on the bone that you want to use. And it then appears as the object that is now controlling the mesh. And we can test that by selecting the armature, switching into pose mode, so the bones will go, well, they'll turn blue when they're selected. So if we just do a quick manipulation, so that's the R key, we can double check that our armature, or the bone of the armature, is controlling the mesh. So that's what we want. So back into object mode, and we can, let's save this, save as number 3. We can export this. So let's try exporting these selected items first, because accessories sometimes are a bit finicky. So we'll select the mesh, shift click the armature, so that's the head bone, and then File, Export, FBX. Yoink, we'll get the file file viewer and the export settings on the right. And what we want for this, because we've got selected objects selected, we want selected objects as our option. Everything else is okay in that section. Geometry, that's all right in that section. Armature, always disable add leaf bones. We don't need any animation, so disable that. Check the file name, check your file location, and then just export. And that hopefully, so let's do this again actually. So the other way to export, select none, so make sure nothing is selected. Export, FBX, so we're doing the same thing again. Whoops. Let's call this 3B, because what we want to do is forcibly export everything that's in the scene. So we disable selected objects. Everything else is okay. Geometry, again, same settings. Armature, again, always disable add leaf bones, and again we don't need bake animations, so we then export. So that's 2 FBXs that we've got there. So let's import these into IMVU. Whoops. So create mode, as always. Derive new product, female accessory, glasses, go. So this is what we're going to replace. So we're going to bring in the FBX files. So FBX import. Click load FBX, browse to the file which is in accessories, toilet paper mask. So we'll do the selected items first. Open. So it brings up this select skeleton root dialog, and it'll give us a couple of options of the skeletons that it's recognized in the file. Generally speaking, if you've just done a standard accessory, the one that you want to select will be 2 bones and 1 mesh. So select that and it'll show your mesh, and then just click configure FBX. So the reason why there's another one that says 3 bones and 1 mesh, FBX files are a skeleton in themselves. So there is our skeleton is just basically a hierarchy. So if we imagine that this is just a hierarchy or representative of a hierarchy, so we could say that this is a skeleton. So this is our skeleton, and it contains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bones. So if we just look at the skeleton on its own, we've got 5 bones. But the way that FBX works, this entry at the top is an element of a skeletal hierarchy. So that then means we have 6 bones, or 6 components to a skeletal structure or a hierarchy. So that's why there's always 2 versions of the same thing. It's because the FBX file is reading this top entry as an element of the skeletal hierarchy of the object. It's a bit of a pain in the butt to keep in mind when you are importing things, but that's why there's always 2 versions of the same thing. So, lesson learned. Right, so attachment 2 bones or mesh, there's our mesh. Configure, drops that into the importer. So our mesh ID for accessories, female accessories, is 2. We want to change the scale 0.01. It's got our material. That's our IMVU compatible material. So as there's only one material, square bracket 0. And then import is going to override. That's what we want. Import changes, apply changes, and there is our mask. Well, hey, that worked. I have to check the mapping. Got a little bit of UV map over what's the word? Overflow? Overflow. But that's our toilet paper mask. So let's try the other one. Derive new product. Accessory. Go. FBX import, load FBX, and this is 3B. So this is why so this has done the same thing. So the one we want is now this bottom one. 2 bones, 1 mesh. But it's given us all these other versions because these are other skeletal hierarchies that the FBX has recognized. Well, the FBX contains this information. IMVU has recognized these structures. So it gives us all of these. But the one we want generally starts with root node. So if we select that, we'll just get the mesh. But it's recognized, or it's interpreted 173 different skeletons, and this will be important. Well, it'll be important to be aware of if you are using Studio. So we'll try doing this project in IMVU Studio as well, see what happens. Right, so select, configure, same setting, 0.01, 2, import. So that's worked as well. So let's just save this. Save as. Toilet paper mask. So let's just go back here, back into Blender, and double check our UV mapping. Oh yeah, it's just gone a bit wonky. So these red vertices are pinned So what that does is it literally pins that vertex in place, so it won't move, but the other ones will. So if we do a unwrap with these pinned vertices, they will all stay in the same position around the perimeter, so that's defining the perimeter of the mesh. They will stay in place and everything will, there it is, rejig to fit that pinning. So we've now got rid of that. So let's re-export. Save. Select the two. Export. FBX. Over the top, selected items. That's okay. Disabled, and that's disabled. So export. Select none. Let's try that again. Export FBX. So that's 3B. Deselect. Double check settings. And export. So let's get that fixed up in IMVU. So we're going to re-import the file and just override the version that's in place right now. So again, skeletal root selection, and in this version it's just got the two skeletal options. Attachment root, 2 bones, 1 mesh. Mesh ID 2, scale is still the same, 0.01. Import changes, and that should auto assemble with the updated UV map section, so that disappears. And there we have it fixed. Save. Do the same with the other one. (3B) root node. So that root node, that's the node that's in the FBX that IMVU sees or interprets as a element of the skeletal hierarchy of the overall FBX. Two, that's okay, that's alright. Import changes, apply changes, and that's updated that as well, so they both work. Right, so let's just save as. Right, so let's see what happens when we use Studio. And this may very well I have to log in. Right, so let's see what this does. So this is Studio, for those that don't know. Oh, there's an update available. So we're just going to have to quickly update. Update now. And the moment, if this doesn't work, the moment this starts to cycle up, I have to close it down because it will kill the computer and it will kill the stream. Right, so for those that don't know about Studio, so what you're seeing at the moment is just your available projects. So everything that you've done is listed on this initial page, and you can sort through it in the same way or a similar way as you can do with the catalogue. But it may be a bit slow. It's being very slow. Come on, catch up. So you can search through or list all your products and projects. But the crucial difference between Studio and Classic is that there is a greater dependency on what can only be described as a verification process. I don't know if that's actually what's going on, but it means that it's slower when you want to look at things because it's verifying essentially the contents of whatever it is that you're trying to look at. And we'll see this when we start working on a project. So to create your project, click the Create button. We'll get the catalogue. It's a bit more advanced than Classic, because in Classic obviously we only get these core derivables, but in Studio they will list catalogue items that you can derive from these brand names. It'll list catalogue items that you can actually derive from instead of just the, or as well as the basic derivables. So we want female accessories. So click on the glasses. It'll show us a preview. So this is the preview on the right, and we'll get a listing of the derivation tree. So this only has a single item in it, but some of the other items that you derive from other creators may have rather long derivation chains for unknown reasons. So derive. So that's what we're replacing. Similar to Classic. So to import an FBX file, we want to click on this hamburger icon, edit, edit import. Come on. The menu is a bit sensitive, so edit. So hamburger, edit, import. Browse to our file. Open. Oh. That's different. Looks like they might have fixed that. So what normally happens, we'll try this again with the other version that's exported all the skeletons. So set up FBX. Change the scale. 0.01. Select our skeleton. Similarly, we want attachment root, 2 bones, 1 mesh. That's okay, so there is our mesh. Next. got the material. So next, no animation, preview, import. So there is our mesh. So this is where it gets a little tricky. So it's brought in the asset. So what we have to do now is replace the glasses mesh with the mask mesh. It doesn't work the same way that it does with classic. So if we're bringing in a mesh, it depends on the item, but if we're bringing in a mesh, we sometimes have to manually set it to override the mesh that we're deriving. So components, mesh, select the female glasses, and then over in the properties panel, we should have the ability to swap the asset. So there is our mask. So that's the glasses, and there is our mask. So we want to select that, preview, and there it's replaced it. And I think the rationale behind doing it that way is that if you want to add a mesh to an existing item, because we don't have the same sort of control over, where is it? We don't have the same sort of control as we do over the mesh IDs when we import something. So let's just re-import that. So we don't have the same control as we do in Classic when we're overriding the mesh IDs or setting up the mesh IDs. So the rationale, I suspect, for doing it this way, the way that Studio does it, it now means that we can override or add to an existing mesh without completely overriding it. So if you make the mesh ID 2 and you still want this to be an actual accessory, the way that you have to do it in Classic would mean that you would have to make this a separate mesh ID, so let's say 3, in order to get that mask to appear and not cause problems with the glasses. So if you wanted to keep those but have your face mask, so that's 2 separate mesh IDs, whereas this way you can add your mesh without interfering with other meshes that might exist in the file, which can cause problems in of itself. So that's why it's a little weird the way that they've done this. But it does work, and it does make sense if you keep that in mind, that it's there so that you can add a mesh to an existing product without necessarily causing problems. So let's just save this. So save file, save as. So let's try breaking Studio. Create a new project. And this is what I mean about it being a bit slow. There we go. Accessories. Glasses. Derive. Right, so we're going to import. So hamburger, edit, import. going to import the FBX with all the skeletons in, and this is what usually breaks the thing. So select open. So this yeah, and that is the stream messed up there. That is what happens when you import an accessory file with a lot of skeletons in. But at least it works if we export selectively. So for Studio specifically, when we're using Blender and we're making accessories, it's best, it seems now, to select the mesh that you want and the skeleton that you want and export those specifically. And that would be just for Studio. Otherwise, you can export you can export everything in the scene for Classic, and that will work fine, but not for Studio. As we just saw, that just basically messed up the stream. And that's what it does. It causes the computer to cycle up and use all its processing power just to interpret however many skeletons there are in the file. But we've got our toilet paper mask, and that's all we were after. So just going to take some pictures and then upload this. Won't do that now, but that was just a quick stream for today. Might be back later, who knows. But it does seem that they have fixed the import bug in Studio, which is good, so long as you only export the bits that you actually need. Right, so on that note, we'll call it quits there. This was only meant to be a quickie, because we were just basically testing all the stream setup. And then we shall see you on the next stream. So do the usual following, liking, clicking buttons and doing stuff. And we shall see you on the next stream. So bye for now, everyone.